We are back in action here once again. Rational Reaction was that with Alex. When are these folks gonna get it, man? When are these folks gonna get it, man? Some of these interviews are so disingenuous. So let's dive into it and let's see what's going on here. And I gotta say, I'm really interested to see how this one turns out.
Bringing the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. Mr. Secretary, thank you for joining us this morning. Has there been any contact with President Zelensky since Friday?
Well, I haven't had any contact with him since Friday. We have plenty of contacts with him, though. Plenty. I mean, he met in the last 10 days. He's met with the Secretary of Commerce. He spoke to the President on the phone, met with the Secretary of Commerce, met with me, met with the Vice President, met with our special envoy, and then was invited and came over on, well, invited, he wanted to come over on Friday to sign this commercial deal. It didn't happen. So there's been plenty of contact with them. I've talked to the foreign minister several times, not since then. And we'll see moving forward. I think the last line in the president's Truth Social post is the one to focus in on, and that is, we'll be ready to re-engage when they're ready to make peace, which is clearly what the president's goal is here. He's trying.
And, if you need some bread, which you do, guess what? You know what I'm saying? Come correct. Just come correct. I talked about this, I'm not trying to copy what I talked about in the last video, but just come correct when it comes to this bag. If you need this bag, you got to come correct. And if that's not happening, and then you're flying all over the world to go and have conversations with other countries that still need our help in order to help you, come on, man. Come on, let's figure this out. We really got to make some sense of all this stuff here. So, and there's ample time to make a deal, ample time to go ahead and make a deal.
Line in the president's Truth Social post is the one to focus in on, and that is, we'll be ready to re-engage when they're ready to make peace, which is clearly what the president's goal is here. He's trying to get Russia to the table to see if there's a way to bring about an end to this conflict. That's his goal. That's his only goal. That's his centralized focus. And, hopefully we'll get to a point where that's possible.
The British Prime Minister said this morning that the United Kingdom and France are working on a peace plan with Ukraine to present to the U.S. Do you know where things stand with that plan?
No, I've talked to both of the foreign ministers of France and the UK yesterday, and I explained to them sort of the events leading up to what you saw on Friday. Look, I think what's really important here is to understand the dynamic. The president is basically saying there's this horrible war. It's been going on for 3 years. It is a bloody stalemate, a meat grinder type war, and he wants it to end. How does it end? It's very simple. The only way it ends is if Vladimir Putin comes to a negotiating table. And right now, President Trump is the only person on earth who has any chance whatsoever of bringing him to a table to see what it is he would be willing to end the war on. Now, maybe their claims or what they want, their demands will be unreasonable. We don't know, but we have to bring him to the table. You're not going to bring him to the table if you're calling him names, if you're being antagonistic. That's just the president's instincts from years and years and years of putting together deals as someone who's in business. And that's the only goal here.
Let me just stop you there for 1 second. Why is it
a war with no end in sight?
Why is it okay to call President Zelensky a dick? Why is it okay?
And here we go. We about to call. See, that's why, man, he was on the right track, not talking. Let my man's get his thoughts off. Now you gotta cut him off. Now we gotta cut him off. And then get into the name call. Forget the name. Who cares? Or who cares about what that? Do you want this bread or not? Do you want the money? Or the weapons, better yet, right? And if you do, right, then guess what? Capitulate. You have no leverage, my guy. And we're talking about, the name calling and this, then that they're like, what are we talking about? What are we talking about? Especially when it comes to the fact, look, if you need that, if you're requesting that help, and and Russia's not in the greatest spot either, but they're in a better spot than Ukraine. At least that's what it seems like. Ukraine is seeking all this help from NATO and this, that, and the third. Your leverage is smoked off. Your leverage is smoked, and everybody and everybody knows it. So come on, man.
Other deals as someone who's in business.
And
that's the only
way. Let me just stop you there for 1 second. Why is it
a war with no end in sight?
Why is it okay to call President Zelensky a dick? Why is it okay to call President Zelensky a dictator, but not, as you say, call Vladimir Putin names?
Listen, we've spent 3 years calling Vladimir Putin names. That's not the point now. The point that we're at now is we're trying to get the man to a table, the Russians. And I've said from the very beginning, maybe they don't want a deal either. We don't know. But we haven't talked to them in 3 years. But maybe they do. The point is, do we want to make... I would ask everybody this. If there are no negotiations, what is the alternative? Another 4 years of war, another 3 years of war, in which the United States and Europe continues to pour billions of dollars into a war in Ukraine? Is that the alternative? I've asked every foreign minister I meet with, tell me your idea of how this turns out. Most don't have a plan. A few have said, well, let's give them another year of fighting. A year from now, a year later, after another year of death, another year of destruction, then maybe Putin will be ready to negotiate at that point. That doesn't sound like a good plan to me, and it certainly is not a plan the president's on board with.
It's not just about...
They want money. That's it. I mean, that's what it sounds like to me. If that's the case, if they're saying, oh, you know what, let's just let them fight it out for another year, and then we'll come back to the table and see what's going on. So you mean you want us to pay into this money pit? The American taxpayers to pay into this money pit for another year? Right? And us to just to agree freely about that? Come on. They can't be that stupid. They can't be that stupid. You know, it seems pretty pragmatic to me if to get both sides to the table, to have conversations with both sides, see what they both want, and then move accordingly. Right. But if neither side is trying to come to the table, well, it sounds like you just want to keep this war going on to keep lining pockets. That's what it sounds like. I don't know. You guys tell me in the chat. You know, I'm not a super deep diver professional when it comes to all these things. I just come at it from a, you know, from the average perspective when it comes to this political stuff. Let's just keep it a bean, right? But that don't sound right to me. That don't sound right to me. Just saying, let's keep the war. Let's see what happens after a year. Let's see. Are folks dying? You know what I'm saying? Are people dying every day? And you trying to be like, oh, let's wait another year? That's wild to me.
Getting people to the table, it's about keeping agreements that are made. And that was one of the points that President Zelensky was making in the Oval Office on Friday, is that Vladimir Putin has not kept the agreements that were made in the past. Wasn't he right about that?
But what is moving forward is the question, not the past. No one here is claiming Vladimir Putin is going to get the Nobel Peace Prize this year, or that he should be the Man of the Year of the Humanitarian Association. What we're arguing here is he has a very large country. They're in full war footing. They're cranking out weapons now at a war footing pace. And we need to figure out, is there a way to get them to stop the war? And the only way you're going to do that is to get Russians engaged in negotiations, something the Europeans haven't been able to do, the Biden administration wasn't able to do or didn't even try. That's the goal here. It's that simple. Can we try to sit with them and figure out whether there's anything, what are the Russians' demands? Under what conditions would the Russians be willing to stop this war? And as I said, we don't know what those are because we haven't talked to them in 3 years. That's the singular goal here, is to try to bring about an end to this conflict, and it begins by getting them to the table. Ultimately, like any truce, like any peace agreement anywhere in the world, those things will have to be enforced, they'll have to be enduring, there'll have to be safeguards put in place. Everybody understands that, but it begins with the first step, and that is engaging them to see if it's even possible. Because if it's not possible, then what we're looking at is a protracted stalemate with thousands of people dying, billions of dollars pouring in, and more death and destruction. And that's not something the president wants to be a part of. He's made it very clear.
Aren't those talks feasible only if the United States is willing to also provide security guarantees to Ukraine? That was the point that President Zelensky was also...
Security guarantees are, right, here's security guarantee. We want to make, look, if we're financially tied together, this is what the whole minerals deal was about, at least what I got from it. If we're tied financially together, we're going to want to protect our financial interests, which is obvious, right? We don't need to, you know, some of those things. It's like one of those, but read between the lines, bro. Look, if we making bread together, well, why wouldn't I want to protect that option to make bread together? What are we talking about? Duh. Yes. right? Do I need to tell you I'm about to put, X, Y, and Z missiles and bombs and this, that, and the third, and you know what I'm saying? Drone. Now we don't need to talk about all that. All we need to talk about is look, let's make sure we get in this bag. Right. And when we get in this bag, we'll make sure this bag is protected. Sound fair enough? Yes, it does. Right. Sign here, 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 and here. I don't know how many signatures there are. Maybe there's one or two. I don't know. But sign here, here, and here, or here. Right? Come on, bro. They out here, man. This is such a disingenuous questions. Right? Disingenuous questions. It's wild.
Making in the Oval Office.
Well, the security guarantees, which I actually like to call deterrence of a few, is all contingent upon there being a peace. Everybody's saying security guarantees to secure the peace. You first have to have a peace. We don't even know if the peace is possible. And this was understood by the Ukrainians. It was explained to them repeatedly. And that is, here's our strategy. We're trying to get Putin to a negotiating table. Let's not rehash. Everyone knows the history here, the back and forth. We understand that. We all understand that. But the question now is, can we get them to a table to negotiate? That's our goal. Don't do anything to disrupt that. And that's what Zelensky did, unfortunately, is he found every opportunity to try to Ukraine-splain on every issue. Then he confronts the vice president. When the vice president says, the goal here is diplomacy, he immediately jumps in and challenges the vice president. Well, what kind of diplomacy? So we all understand, okay, that Putin is not going to be an easy negotiator in this regard. We all get that. But we have to start the process to see if something is even possible. And I honestly am puzzled. I just don't understand. The Biden administration berated Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israelis, put all kinds of conditions and pressure on them to try to get a ceasefire. In this particular case, we've been nice by comparison. And all we're trying to do here is figure out whether a peace is possible. All these other things that people keep bringing up, that'll have to be a part of a negotiation. Right now, there is no negotiation. Shouldn't we at least try to see if there is a way to end this war in a way that's acceptable to both sides and is enduring and sustainable? How is that a bad thing? I really am puzzled why anyone thinks that trying to be a peacemaker is a bad thing. It's only a bad thing when it's Donald Trump trying to do it. When it's President Trump, it's absurd to me.
Well, even some of your Republican allies are puzzled by the steps that President Trump has taken to placate Vladimir Putin. I want to bring up a post that Lisa Murkowski.
Well, which ones? What steps has the president taken to placate?
Let me show you.
Yeah. Make him stand on that. What's up? What's up? Ooh, what's up though? You know what I'm saying? Look at little Rubio out there. He was quick on the draw with that. Who? Come on, man. Assistance to the Russians? Have we given the Russians 180?
Let me show you what.
Are we arming the Russians? Are we providing economic assistance to the Russians? Have we given the Russians $180 billion?
Please let me ask you a question. This is Lisa Murkowski, and here's what she says. This week started with administration officials refusing to acknowledge that Russia started the war in Ukraine. It ends with a tense and shocking conversation in the Oval Office and whispers from the White House that they may try to end all U.S. support for Ukraine. I know foreign policy is not for the faint of heart, but right now I am sick to my stomach as the administration appears to be walking away from our allies and embracing Putin, a threat to democracy and U.S. values around the world. Those are not my words. That's Senator Lisa Murkowski. What's your response?
Well, yeah, we're a free country. People have a right to these opinions. I would just say to you, what have we done to placate the Russians? The only thing we've done is say, are you guys willing to talk about peace? I say the same point. We're not giving that. We haven't given.
You voted with North Korea and Russia and you voted with North Korea and Russia and Belarus in the United Nations and against our Western allies.
No, let me tell you. All right. So do you know what the United Nations resolution was? I'll tell you if you want to hear what it was. It basically said this has been a horrible war. It's time for it to end. The job of the UN is to bring about peace in the world. I thought that's what the UN was created to do, to stop wars and to prevent them. And that's what the resolution did. Was it antagonistic towards the Russians? No. Back to the point. But it also didn't praise the Russians. All it said is this is a bad war. It needs to end. And by the way, at the Security Council, which has not been widely reported, the first resolution on Ukraine that has passed the Security Council in 3 years passed this week because of the leadership of President Trump. And it's a resolution that says bad war needs to end. Let's bring the two sides together. That's what the resolution is. Again, what is the United Nations for? Isn't it not a forum to promote peace in the world? And shouldn't we all be happy that we have a president who's trying to stop wars and prevent them instead of start them? And I just don't get it. I really don't, other than the fact that it's Donald J. Trump. If this was a Democrat that was doing this, everyone would be saying, well, he's on his way to the Nobel Peace Prize. This is absurd. We are trying to end a war. You cannot end a war unless both sides come to the table, starting with the Russians. And that is the point the president has made. And we have to do whatever we can to try to bring them to the table to see if it's even possible. I'm not promising you it's possible. I'm not telling you it's 90% likely. I'm saying it's 0% likely if we don't get them to a negotiating table. And the sooner everyone grows up around here and figures out that this is a bad war that's heading in a bad direction with death and destruction and all kinds of dangers surrounding it that could spiral into a broader conflict, the sooner people grow up and realize that, I think the more progress we're going to be able to make. But the president's crystal clear. He campaigned on it, and he's going to govern on it. And that is, he is going to be a president that tries to achieve peace, and he has been very clear this is a war that would have never happened had Donald Trump been in the White House, and it needs to end, and we're going to do everything we can to end it in an enduring and sustainable and fair way.
Well, you said it. Enough said, Mr. Marco Rubio. Come on, man. Come on. That's so interesting, man. All these folks are just trying to talk about he said this, she said this, and they not even talking to each other, right? They just talking about what was said on TV or whatever the case is, or was said behind closed. This is such an interesting thing about how about how they talk peace, but are they trying to get peace? You know what I'm saying? It's like this big old circle jerk of a situation, and folks are like, oh, we talking about it. But it seems like to me, the only person that's trying to put it together, trying to put the deal together, really trying to put the deal together, seems like it's Trump. At least he brought him in the Oval Office. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about it in front of the squad. Let's talk about it in front of the people. Right. So we can have some realistic conversations. And then, obviously it kind of blew up, man. So give me your guys' thoughts on that. It's really interesting. What I did find is something that's real interesting here. What I did find is something that's very, very interesting when it comes to, let's see what the Dems said previously. Let's see what the conversations were previously when it comes to, having conversations with Putin and all that type of stuff. Let's dive into that real quick.
Can we really believe that Vladimir Putin, with his own self-interest for Russia, is orchestrating this huge maneuver to remove all of Assad's chemical weapons, and it's just going to happen?
No, we don't have to believe it. We just have to see what happens and make the most of what happens. You work for the best and prepare for the worst in this business. But I think it would be a terrible mistake not to take advantage of the opportunity. And, look, Mr. Putin he's very smart.
Well, you know him better than most people.
Yeah, I do.
What was he like behind closed doors away?
Putin's very smart. Placating, huh? Very interesting.
From, the sort of the public utterances.
Smart and remarkably, we had a really good, blunt relationship.
How blunt?
Brutally blunt.
Ever fisticuffs?
No, but I think, I think the right strategy most of the time but it's frustrating to people in your line of work. You should be brutally honest with people in private. And then if you want them to help you, try to avoid embarrassing them in public.
Right.
Now, sometimes they do things which make it impossible for you to keep quiet. But by and large, I found all the people I dealt with appreciated it if I told them the truth. How I honestly felt and what our interests were and what our objectives were. And they also appreciated it when I didn't kick them around in public for as long as I couldn't kick them around. So, that's my experience. And
did Putin ever renege on a personal agreement he made to you?
He did not.
So behind closed doors, he could be trusted?
He kept his word in all the deals we made.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Very interesting. Very interesting. Very interesting. It's my Dr. Umar, right? Repeat something 200 times in a row, and so it embeds in your mind. But isn't that interesting? Okay, so Putin could be trusted. And I'm not saying he can be. I don't know. But Bill, and this was maybe 13 years. This was 2013. Bill Clinton talking about that. with Putin. He had a lot of interactions with him and talking about it's important to be brutally honest. So having a conversation, an open conversation in front of the American people, in front of the world, by the way, open conversation, doesn't that seem brutally honest to you guys? Um, I think we're seeing a lot more. No. Yeah. I believe we're seeing a lot more and we're just not deciphering it right. Like it's being spun so many different ways. And in my honest opinion, I think we're handling it perfectly right now. It's like, look, the Democrats, the Republicans, I'm pretty pragmatic. I'm like, okay, if it makes sense, it just makes sense. I'm not going to say anything that doesn't make sense just because a Democratic says it or because a Democrat says it, or it makes sense because a Republican says it. I'm not going to say that. If it makes sense to me, it makes sense. And Bill Clinton was making sense right here. Be brutally honest, right? Have real conversations. Now in the world we're in, it's a whole lot different than 2013, and it's probably way different than it was in the 90s, and early in 2000 in the 90s when Bill Clinton was president. It's way different now. So you have way more eyes on things, right? And you can't even slant things as crazy as it can be slanted as it was back then. Now there's a lot more eyes on things and a lot more people want the information. But I want you guys to put in the comments and talk about this because this is real interesting. So we see two perspectives, right? We see Marco Rubio talking about, let's get a deal. Let's get a deal done. Right. Ukraine, you already seen the video. By the time you got to this video, you probably already seen how Trump and Zelensky already handled their business. And then now you're seeing Bill Clinton this is from back in the day, but I bet the Dems don't want this video to come up. They don't want this video to come up because they laud Bill Clinton in front of everybody's face when it comes to Democratic presidents and stuff like that. So you guys let me know what you guys think. Go and like, comment, subscribe, and go ahead and buy us a cup of coffee if you are so inclined. We appreciate that. And you already know what it is. Without further ado, Rational Reactions. Peace.